All right, I got my selfie stick thing here that I've had for so long and I've never used it. So I can move this around. There's Babe Ruth. I got a comment on a video that was just talking about, I don't know, talking about house prices and how it's somewhat difficult for younger people to afford homes while prices are, basically going up very high and incomes are somewhat stagnant. Some people make really good money and it doesn't really matter, right? But if you just look at the median income, you look at the home price. If you're someone that's just a wage earner, you're going to have a problem affording asset prices because asset prices have just vastly gone way up faster than wages have. Um, but I do think that if you still had a traditional system where people were getting married and were teaming up as a unit, especially now when you have both people working, I think it would be a lot more attainable. Even back in the 50s and 60s, I know things were much different, but the wife or the wife most of the time didn't work, and the man had a job and they could afford a house, a modest home, not renting. They could afford to buy the house. They could afford to have a couple kids. They could afford vehicles. They could afford to go on the vacations, go to church, all that stuff, right? And be part of all that community and all those things, right? Donate money to the church, maybe. Okay. And that was without the woman working. Okay. So now you just have a much different situation, but now most women are working. So you have that going for you where, there's a dual income now in many cases. The problem is that people aren't really getting married as much, and people aren't necessarily pooling their resources anymore because they're not really living together as much or getting married or settling down and having a family. So if you just look at single people or people that just have one income, and you try to basically extrapolate that out to say, is this one income going to be enough for this person to buy a house, as well as afford all the other expenses in someone's life? And a lot of times it's not enough, or you have to be incredibly diligent about saving those resources. Because again, home prices have just basically ran away from wages. But again, if you did get married or you do have a partner and you have two incomes, I think you probably could still do it. That was what one of the guys' comments said, was that he's diligent, he saves his money, he's got emergency savings, they don't have any debt, they're very good about staying away from debt. It sounds like they both work, and their combined income's like 200,000 a year. So that's obviously very doable and achievable. If both people work, if both people are have good habits about you know living within their means, saving for the future, then it's very possible. The problem is most people don't do that. Okay, most people don't probably make 100,000 a year, and then they probably can't find a partner that also makes 100,000 a year, and then they can't live together and be on the same path. And so that's kind of the problem. So if you're one person and you're only making 60,000 a year or 80,000 a year, you're probably going to have to be living with like roommates. And if you don't live with roommates, if you make 60 or $80,000 a year, a big percentage of your income is going to have to go towards that housing expense. Maybe it's 1,500 a month or 2,000 a month just for your rent. And so that's the problem. It becomes a lot easier if you have two incomes and you guys are pooling resources and you're saving money and investing for the future. If you're just one person, again, it's just gonna be more of a struggle because you're competing with people that have dual income. You're competing with people that have higher income, and you're competing for assets that the prices of those assets just continue to go up. Just look at housing prices, right? So I thought about that and I said, yeah, that's a great point. If you still can find a partner and both people are working, you can make a good income. And I think even in an expensive area, you could do it because, it's going to be the monthly mortgage is going to be a much smaller percentage of your total income if both people are working and if you're making a decent income. So that's still possible. But again, the problem is that people just aren't doing that. And so you have younger people that are single or that are not in a relationship and they're not necessarily working together. They're not starting that family. They're not, settling down together and deciding to buy a house together. People usually are not going to buy a house together, obviously, unless they're married. So if people aren't getting married until they're in their mid 30s, then you're not going to have a lot of younger people in their 20s that are just buying houses because they're just not going to be able to afford it. Their incomes are going to be lower. They're not going to be married, so they're not going to have that dual income. And their goals are just going to not be aligned with home ownership. And it seems so out of touch because it's, 450,000 or whatever it is now for a normal priced house. If you're in Seattle like I am or any bigger city, you can't find a shack for 450,000. You could maybe get a condo for 450,000, but you're not going to get a house for anything less than 600,000 probably in the greater Seattle area. Anywhere like anywhere an hour in any direction outside of Seattle, probably 600,000 for something that has four walls. So it's still doable. I think if you're able to find a good partner, you both work. I think you can make it work. If it's more of a traditional type system, then you're gonna have to have one of the partners making it, making 200,000, because that's what you kind of need on a yearly basis to afford it. So let me know what you guys think on it. Again, I think it's still possible if you find a partner and you both are working. But it seems like that's not happening as much. So we have what we have. Let me know what you think. Subscribe. See you in the next one.